Welcome back to another episode of From the Couch Sports. My name is Connor and I'm your host. This is episode 25, and if you like the content, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. I got a few things I want to get into. To start things off, the Heat Celtics series ended a couple days ago. I've sat on it and just, as a Heat fan, it was a tough loss, but I was able to kind of sit back and evaluate the game and just think about it for a few days and see, what my thoughts were. Like the Jimmy Butler shot at the end of the game, for example. The officiating in this game, I thought was a little. There were some bad calls. Most notably the Max Struss three that was overturned. This play, honestly, I don't think I've seen this happen in basketball for a very long time. Or I can't even think of another example where a player scores the ball and then the game goes on for like another 5 minutes. Like the game went on for multiple other possessions. There was more points on top, like afterwards, and they still went back in and overturned and took away 3 points from the Heat. I think that could have drastically swayed the end of the game. It just crazy that they did that. I haven't seen that really happen before. But what everything led down to, Jimmy Butler was like one of the best players in basketball in this series. He really took that superstar. He's a true superstar. He was having games like all-time Heat games almost. Like those games rival any kind of game that LeBron or Wade had when they were wearing the Heat jersey. He had the 47-point game in Game 6. And then Game 7, he had 35 and just completely carried the Heat, helped them climb back in. They went in, basically, we're losing the entire game by a blowout. And in the fourth quarter, deep into the fourth quarter, they go on a run and they bring the game within 2 points. And Jimmy Butler gets the ball with 17, 18 seconds left. And he pulls for a three. And a lot of people are, saying Jimmy Butler should have just driven to the hole and, tried to get a foul. I think Al Horford was kind of guarding the paint area. They're saying he should have attacked the basket, try to get a foul. It's only a 2-point game. You can tie this thing up. Maybe you can even get an and one. And I understand. Kind of there's multiple sides to everything, and I totally get that argument there. In my opinion, I think he made the right decision. You live and you die by your superstar, especially when you got a guy like Jimmy Butler who's taken a Heat team way further than frankly they belong. In the playoffs specifically, like this, the Heat's lack of scoring and lack of other options was just so notable. Like pretty much everybody besides Jimmy Butler getting the ball, you don't have a lot of confidence in them scoring the ball. And that's not to say anything negative about them. Like they're just not, they're not all like guys who are going to score off the dribble or anything like that. Kyle Lowry has been dealing with a lot of injuries. He's older in his career. He had a couple really nice games in the series, but you couldn't count on him every single night. Tyler Hero was hurt. And then you're getting Vincent Struss. They're having decent games here and there, but they're more role players. And then Bam isn't the most polished offensive player yet. He's getting a lot better over his career, but he's not. I don't think he's to the point yet where if you say you need 30 points to win this game, he's going to go out and get it for you. And then also the Celtics are just great at defense. They've got a lot of great guys there. So in this position, Jimmy Butler coming down the court. You got the ball with 17 seconds left. You haven't led the entire game. Take the shot to win. You can't expect, you guys give everything you've got to get to this point. You're in Game 7. You fought all the way back from a game that looks like to be a 15, 20-point blowout most of the game. And you can live and you die on your superstar's shoulders. He could have easily made that shot, and it would have been one of the greatest shots ever, going to push them to the finals. And so I don't understand the hate behind the shot. This dude gave everything to the team this year. Like, he was hurt. He had the knee problems. He rolled his ankle in a few games. Like, this is a guy that just pushing through pain and, gave it his all, and his all was great. Like, he had a great performance in this finals. I know he had a couple down games. One of the games he missed a half of the game because of the injury, and the other game was like kind of coming off of that. So, as a Heat fan, I'm really happy with how things played out. Like, I'm happy that we reached the Eastern Conference Finals Game 7. Not happy we're not in the finals, but like, you live with that. Seeing Jimmy Butler go on this run, it was like, it was a crazy run. Honestly, it reminded me a little bit of the Kawhi Leonard Raptors run a few years back. Like, he's taking over games on the offensive side of things and on the defensive side, and it was really fun to watch. For the Heat going forward, you got to think, like, how far can this current constructed team go? Like, I feel like this is pretty much as far, even if we were to make the finals, I don't think we would have been the favorite. So if you're looking at the Heat going forward, I think they might need to make a move if they're wanting to do something to push them over the top. And I don't know exactly what that move needs to be. I think if they could unload some, future assets, some of their, young talented potential guys, and go out and get a superstar, then I think you have to try to do that. If you could pull away like a Dame Lillard or someone like that to the Heat, obviously it's like the Heat thing. It's the Heat fan thing to like Photoshop all the different free agents in the Heat jerseys or different players around the league, and I totally get that. But it's also like you got Jimmy Butler, and like Bam provides a lot to the team. If they could get another like really good player, be it a point guard or just another guy who can score the ball at will, I think this team can push for, potentially winning a championship next year. So if I'm the Heat, if I'm in Pat Riley's shoes, I try to see what I can do to make that happen. The only thing that's kind of tough is like, if you're going to go out and trade for someone big, you're probably going to have to give up Bam and maybe even Tyler Hero. And I know like Heat fans love those guys. Obviously, Tyler Hero was injured in most of the conference finals, so it was kind of tough. Like, we didn't really even get to see, like, could he have gone on a similar run to his rookie year in the playoffs? But that's just my thoughts as a Heat fan, and like, what we should do going forward to get into the Celtics Warriors series. I think this is going to be a very fun matchup. Right now, the Warriors are a favorite on most booking sites. They're about a minus 150 in this series. Just a slight favorite, though. And like I really think this is going to be a good series. If I'm going to make a prediction right now, early in the video, I'm going to make the prediction that the Warriors are going to win this series in 6 games. I think that the Celtics are good enough at defense. They can kind of hold the Warriors, and they can have a couple good games out of like Jason Tatum, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown. Like if they're able to get something like that going, they could push this game to 6-7 games. The thing though with the Warriors is I think they've got too much firepower. The Warriors potentially have Gary Payton Jr. coming back, Otto Porter coming back. To their depth. Maybe even Andre Iguodala. I know he's been kind of like on the fence with the injuries. I mean, if they get everybody back, and on top of what they already have, the starting 5 on the Celtics are just great defensively. I think they're one of the best defensive teams in basketball. But the problem is that they don't have that defensive depth necessarily. So what happens when Marcus Smart's not going to guard Steph Curry the entire game? And even, let's say they both go to the bench, who's going to guard Jordan Poole when he comes in? The Warriors just have so much firepower. You got Klay Thompson. You got Andrew Wiggins playing great basketball. Draymond Green. Looney's playing great. Just, all the depth that the Warriors have, I think they're going to be a very difficult team to beat in the finals. But on the same token, the Celtics have a lot of talent as well. And they're not like a new young team or anything. This is a team that's weathered. They've been through playoff series together for years. That core of guys on the Celtics have been around for a really long time. And what's happening? Because like Al Horford's been on the team for a while. I know he left for a couple years, but like he's coming back on the team when he's a little bit older. But now these guys are just entering their prime, or at least making that next step in terms of their career. In Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, both of those guys have had great playoff runs. You know, they haven't had insane games every single game necessarily, but like Jason Tatum has single-handedly helped the Celtics win games. Jaylen Brown has done the same. Jaylen Brown's even kind of kept them alive in games that Jason Tatum hasn't played his best in. And, you know, these are both two young stars and emerging into superstars, and they're great offensively and defensively. You've got the defensive player of the year. Like, they're a very dangerous team as well. The thing is, to me, the Warriors are just so good at scoring the ball. Like, I don't know if the Celtics are going to be able to outscore them 4 games out of 7. That would be very surprising, but you know, it's basketball, and it's a game of runs. Anything can happen. The Warriors do have the home court advantage though in this series. So it's going to be an interesting series to watch, to see how things go down and play out. This next game is going to be Thursday night, game 1 in Golden State. So I'm going to be tuning in, seeing how that goes. We're going to cover all of the finals on the channel and everything like that. I wanted to talk about the Tank Davis Rolly Romero fight from this past weekend. This was a good fight. You know, there wasn't a whole lot of output. But you know, anytime there's a fight that like ends in a pretty crazy knockout, like you gotta like it. And so Tank Davis got the TKO in the 6th, or I think they counted it as a KO actually in the 6th round. Rolly Romero was kind of like leaning forward on a lot of shots, and you know, he had all of his body weight kind of leaning forward, and Tank Davis just caught him perfect with a left hook. And it dropped him. He fell against the ropes, and then he stood up, and he was just on wobbly legs. He couldn't even hold it together in front of the ref. So they called the fight, and I've seen some people saying that like that shot was like a weak shot. Like Tank didn't even land anything big on him, and it's like people don't understand. Like you're shifting all of your body weight forward, and your opponent, who has crazy power as it is, because almost every one of his fights has been a knockout. I think besides 2 of his fights total in his career. And you know, you're leaning forward, and this guy catches you clean on the chin. Like almost anybody's gonna get knocked out with a shot like that. I don't think it's a weak shot by any means. I'm not sure why. Like people just want to critique these fighters for some reason. You know, they want to say negative things about Rolly Romero and you know, try to discount the win that Tank had. In this fight, I thought it was a very close fight. You know, personally, I thought Romero might have been slightly ahead. If you were to look at like the scorecards, I know afterwards, of course, the official scorecards had Tank Davis ahead. I think on 2 of the 3 cards. So they don't all necessarily agree with me. That's perfectly fine. I think Rolly Romero was looking really good in this fight. The thing is, he kept overextending, and a lot of the commentators they even mentioned this early in the fight, saying that he's overextending, kind of setting that up like he's leaving himself vulnerable. And I don't think he necessarily, you know, these are both guys that are undefeated, and when you're undefeated, like you've never lost in the ring, like he's probably never felt that feeling of getting knocked out, and so like you have a little bit of that invincibility feel to you. We see it a lot of in MMA fighters as well. They're undefeated and they feel like they can't be touched. But everybody is a human, and everybody's brains, when they bounce against their skull, can get knocked out. And so this happens all the time in undefeated boxers' careers. And I don't think that we should like hold such a high standard on the 0 record for a boxer. I think that a boxer losing a fight gives them a little bit more character, and you know, gives them more to work for. And like in the history of boxing, almost all of the greats have dropped a fight or 2, but it's what they've done after that that's really solidified their careers. And Rolly Romero's still a young guy. I think he's only been boxing for 9 or 10 years. Um, you could see the potential there. He could still very well go on to have a good career. He's calling for an immediate rematch. I mean, I don't see that. Like, if this was like a Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder one situation, like, let's say Rolly Romero boxed him up for 12 rounds, was winning the whole time, and then Tank landed a bomb and just knocked him out, then I would say, okay, I can understand like asking for a rematch right away. But you get knocked out in the first half of the fight, like I could see them rematch down in the future maybe, but I think at this point, like Rolly Romero should probably get another couple fights under his belt, rebound from this loss, and I think he really will. This guy, like if you listen to him, you know he's a very charismatic guy, ton of confidence in himself. Like he was saying some crazy stuff, like he's the most dangerous boxer ever. Like no, I think he said explosive or power. Like he said something like that. Just the most powerful hands ever. Like this guy has so much confidence, and he believed he was going to win that fight, and he was doing really good until he got caught. Um, so I think he's going to bounce back. I think he's going to have a good career from this point. A lot of boxers can learn from a loss. And then for Tank Davis, I mean, he's doing great. Like I think he's 27-0 now after this win. I'm curious like what his next opponent is. I feel like he's probably gonna fight someone that not a lot of people know of next, because it seems like a lot of guys are kind of tied to fights. Like Loma, for example, he's in Ukraine right now, I believe, fighting like a literal war. So I don't know if he's gonna fight right away. Even though I think Usyk, the heavyweight, is like training for the Anthony Joshua fight, so I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for Loma to fight. I don't think it's like a common thing that's talked about with everything going on in his country. And then outside of that, like Ryan Garcia has been tied to Tank Davis for years, but Ryan Garcia needs to fight someone before he earns the opportunity to fight Tank Davis. I think like if he could get a good win, like over Cruz or something, like they've been talking about him fighting, then I can see that happening. But before then, I don't think he deserves. I don't think you can book that fight right now, with his last performance. And then a couple other names I'm thinking like that could potentially fight Tank. George Kambosos. The thing is with him is he's gonna fight Devin Haney this weekend. Actually, I'm really interested in that fight. Devin Haney's a legit fighter too. He's a really young guy, and I don't know if this is like, because I think George is like 5 years older than him or something like that. Haney taking this fight. I think he's 21 or 22. He's taking this fight really early. So we're gonna see how that fight plays out. This guy's got a ton of potential in his future career as well. But regardless of the outcome of this coming fight this weekend, I believe that the fight has like a rematch clause tied to it. So if Devin Haney wins, then they rematch in Australia. If George Kambosos wins, I think they still might have a rematch tied to it. I'd have to double check on that part of things. But if that's the case, these guys are going to be tied up for the next year fighting each other, basically. So that kind of rules out either one of them fighting Tank Davis. And then one that like I really want to see is Shakur Stevenson moving up in weight. So normally he fights at 130. He'd move up to 135 to fight Tank. I think that's the biggest fight they could make, and the best. Like Shakur Stevenson is a phenomenal young boxer, got worlds of potential, and him fighting Tank Davis, I think that's a huge fight. He even said it himself. They asked him after the fight. He said that fight would be. I think he said it would be bigger than Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence fighting. But I think it's like to me, I'm excited about both of those. If they could book both of those fights, you really are getting some of the best fighters in the world fighting each other, entering their primes or in their primes. I think it's would be a lot of fun to watch. But that kind of ties everything up with the boxing I wanted to talk about, because it was just the fight last weekend. And then obviously we're going to tune in more, and we'll cover a little bit more this weekend after the Devin Haney, George Kambosos fight. And then the UFC is back this week, thankfully. Like last weekend was kind of hard, like because there was no sports basically, at least none of the sports that I typically watch outside of the Tank fight. And that Tank Davis didn't even fight till like I'm on the Mountain Time Zone. He didn't even fight until like 10 or 11 over here. So it was kind of long. We didn't get any UFC, but this weekend we are back to a UFC ESPN card, and this is headlined by Alexander Volkov and Jairzinho Rosenstrike. This fight, like, there's, with the heavyweights, some of these main events are just brutally slow because they're 5 rounds and the guys just point fight, and they wait for one big punch and they wait 5 rounds to land it. There's also some of these fights where the heavyweights go in and the heavyweights clash, and when you get two giant humans that have crazy power in their hands, and when they connect, they put one of each other out. So there's always a chance for that. Honestly, it can go both ways. I know a lot of people aren't like super excited for this to be the main event. I'm excited for any kind of fights to be back, to be honest. I like tuning into pretty much every UFC event. Last week we didn't even have any of the other big organizations. PFL didn't do anything. Bellator didn't. So getting back to MMA in general, I think it will be great. And then the featherweight event is Dan Ige versus Mavsar Evolev. And this guy is 15-0. Dan Ige is 15-5. But Dan Ige is one of the contenders of the division. I think before the Korean Zombie fight, they were saying like he's a fight away from potentially fighting for the belt. And I know he's lost recently, but he's still a very good fighter. He's kind of great all around, and he's got crazy hands. But Masfar is 15-0, but he's 5-0 in the UFC. So this guy's quickly emerging as a contender as well. So we'll see how that one plays out. We'll cover a little bit more after the event happens. I'll cover like the best fights and everything like we typically do. But if you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe to the video, and thanks for tuning in.